بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين ورحمة الله للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم إني أبرأ إليك من كل حول وقوة وألجأ لحولك وقوتك يا أرحم الراحمين. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our new session in Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam, as we explained before, is a book which compiles the authentic ahadith of Al-Imam al-Bukhari and Muslim, basically on legal topics. In today's session, we continue on the chapter of purification, and the title is Washing a Vessel Licked by a Dog. In Islamic Sharia, the types of impurities, there are two types of impurities. Physical impurity, this is a mass or a material which is filthy, and the Sharia gave a determination about it that it is impure, like, for example, blood or urine, etc. Or it may be a ritual impurity, and a ritual impurity is a description of a piece of cloth or body that it needs to be, or a certain procedure must be done to remove its state of impurity. And this is, for an instance, is made by ablution or wudu, if it is a minor state of impurity, and it is ghusl in case it is a major ritual impurity like janaba. And both wudu and ghusl may be replaced by tayammum, in case water is not accessible or a person is not able to use this water due to a case of sickness or illness. For physical impurities, the Sharia or the scholars subclassified it into, or subcategorized it into three major types too. One which is the normal najasa. This is washed, it is cleaned by just washing it by water, like urine, for example. Number two, najasatun mughallada. Najasatun mughallada means that it is excessive filth, or what we can call it is a filth which needs special type of washing. And this is when a utensil or a vessel is licked by a dog or by a pig, it should be actually washed 7 times, as we will explain in this hadith. And the third type is what you can call minor and light najasa. Light najasa is a najasa which is washed by just sprinkling water into the spot. And this will be explained when we talk about the najasa of a male child who did not reach the age of independently relying on food. So as long as he is nursed, a male child, if he urinates, it's just easy to just sprinkle water on it. So in our hadith today, the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu falls into the great najasa, falls into dealing with the great najasa. The hadith reads as follows: عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إذا شرب الكلب في إناء أحدكم فليغسله 7. ولمسلم: أولاهن بالتراب. وله في حديث عبد الله بن مغفل رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إذا ولغ الكلب في الإناء فاغسلوه 7 وعفروه 8 بالتراب. The translation of this hadith goes as follows. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who said, the Messenger of Allah said, if a dog drinks in one of your utensils, then let him wash it 7 times. According to the version related by Imam Muslim, wash it 7 times, the first of which should be with earth. And it is reported by Muslim on the authority of Abdullah ibn Mughaffal that the Messenger of Allah said, if a dog licks in a vessel, wash it 7 times and rub it the 8th time with earth. So we see a number of ahadith, a number of versions, and those versions complement each other. We will, in fact, go into the jurisprudence of this hadith. The first phrase in this hadith is as follows. When we say that it is related by Imam Muslim, it means that Imam Muslim is a compiler of hadith, which means that he reported it in his book. But for sure, the hadith has a sahabi also, and it has a full chain of narrations. Hadith jurisprudence of the points derived from hadith start with the word wash it. As you see, the word wash it, this is a command, this is imperative. The default rule in Islamic Sharia, the default rule that when the Prophet ﷺ issues a command or he gives an order, the default rule that this command indicates obligation. So it is obligatory to wash a vessel which is licked by a dog. This is based on the explicit indication of this hadith. It is also confirmed by the other hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the ritual purification of a vessel when a dog licked in it is that it must be washed 7 times. It must be washed 7 times. So the ritual purification and the physical purification of the pot or the vessel which is licked by a utensil is that it must be washed 7 times. Imam Malik, you know that Imam Malik has a different view with regard to the purity and impurity of dogs. Imam Malik believed that both the water and the vessel are pure. He said that both of them are pure because he doesn't believe that the saliva of a dog is pure. But Imam Malik, my brothers and sisters, he based his argument here in 2 points. The first point is said that most impurities are removed by 1 or 3 times. He noticed that when the Sharia commands the removal of any type of impurities, it restricts actually to just 1 or 2 times or even 3 times. So why the Prophet ﷺ gave the number 7 here? He said that since the Prophet ﷺ gave the number 7, which is irrational, so there must be a legal reason which is not identified here. The reason is not to just cleansing the najasa of the dog, But it is a matter of ibadah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enacts something without giving its reason, like why al-Dhuhr is 4 rak'ats, why, we call them, these are closed texts in the sense that it is basically to test our submission to the text of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said that the number 7 here indicates that this najasa is basically irrational. So there is no najasa, in fact, but the Prophet ﷺ just commanded us to wash it 7 times. Number 2, he said that the removal of physical impurities such as feces can be achieved in less than 7 washes. And the najasa of the dog cannot be compared to, uh, to when a person or an animal defecates. For sure, the najasa of a dog is less in this case. So he said that the number 7 is irrational, and consequently, it is the pot itself is pure, and the water left in it is pure, and we can use it. There is no problem. But Ibn Daqiq al-Eid argued with him by raising 2 counter arguments. Number 1, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he said that the purification of a dog's impurity should be held as rational act of worship. Why Ibn Daqiq al-Eid said that? Because he said when this is the normal way, the default rule in Islamic Sharia is that any ruling, the default rule with regard to the massive majority of details in Islamic Sharia and Islamic law is based on rationalization. The Quran and the Sunnah provides specific and particular reasons why the Quran, why the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ enacted such an act or enacted such a ruling with regard to a certain act or in certain circumstances. So we have to accept the default rule that any act is rational, and we cannot refer to irrationality saying that it is irrational except when we have a very strong dalil to say that. So based on this, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, by the way, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he has an elaborate commentary on Umdat al-Ahkam, which is called Ahkaam al-Ahkam, and he is a very prominent usuli. And Ibn Daqiq al-Eid was actually a Maliki scholar, and then he converted to, or he changed it to Shafi'i school of law. So he said that there should be a reason, and the reason here is that the najasa of the kalb, of the dog, is actually more than the najasa which results from urine or any other impurities. Why? Because the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ commanded the believers to sit aloof from the dog. So here, the number 7 is intended, and this number 7 has been actually followed, as you see in the hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ also commanded them to follow the 7 with, or to include one with dirt, with soil, to exaggerate in removing this state of impurity. So this is the reason. This is the reason that we can say the impurity of a dog has a reason, and based on that, the massive majority of the Muslim scholars maintain that when a dog licks in a utensil or in a vessel, the vessel must be washed 7 times, in addition to the fact that the water must be poured out, spilled, simply because it is impure. And this is in fact confirmed by another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which commands us to pour the water if it is licked or if it is diluted or polluted by the saliva of a dog. The second point in this hadith, my brothers and sisters, is the impurity of a dog's body. So the scholars were saying Now, according to this authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it refers to the utensil or to the vessel. What about if a dog does not lick a vessel but just immerses its feet therein? Does the same ruling of washing the vessel apply? The majority of scholars maintain that the whole body of a dog is impure. And this is proved, my brothers and sisters, by way of analogy. By way of analogy or qiyas. Qiyas, this is a tool of a jurist where he extends the ruling which is already mentioned in a text to an issue which does not fall in the boundaries of that text. So, for example, here the text talks about one thing, which is you can say that in this text is talking about what? It's talking about the saliva or the mouth of the dog, right? Because the hadith used this term, the hadith used that word, إذا شرب, إذا لعق. لعق or waliغ or shariba means if the dog drinks. And let me explain for you how the dog drinks. The dog does not drink like us, so we cannot call it is shariba when we describe the process of a dog's drinking. In Arabic, we call it waligha. Why? Because the dog does not fix um, his lips into the vessel and drink like us. He makes a process of wulugh. What is wulugh? Wulugh is actually stirring up the water through his own tongue, and then he moves it into his mouth. So in that process, the dog has saliva falling into the water, and most probably this is the reason that the water becomes impure, and the Sharia initiated this process of extra cleaning. So here the scholar said the most the a dog's mouth is proved impure by the text, right? This is proved by the text. So we can extend the ruling to judge the whole body of a dog as impure, and it needs an evidence or a rationale based on evidence. So the scholars maintain that a dog's mouth is the cleanest part of its body and most eminent part of it, and therefore the rest of its body is more likely to be impure. This is the reason of calling that they call it analogy, and this is qiyas. The type of qiyas here is called the qiyasul awla. It's analogy of the superior. We have uh, different types of analogy, and I hope that you follow up with me. And if you have any problem in understanding this rule, you just inquire, inshallah. Here is we have three types of analogy. Okay, what is analogy? As I mentioned to you, analogy is the extension of a legal ruling which already exists in a text to another issue which is not included in the text, because they have something in common, and this common we call it illa or rational, or we call it effective cause. Like in our case now, we have the case of the dog's saliva, okay, and we have also the whole body of the dog. Can we say that the whole body of the dog is impure as the mouth of the dog or not? So the scholar said, yes, we can say that the legal ruling, which is the impurity of the mouth of the dog, is extended to include the whole of his body, simply because if we say that the most honored, the most eminent, the best thing in the dog is his mouth, is its mouth. So if its mouth is impure, for sure the rest of his body is should be actually regarded as impure. This we call it قياس الأولى. Why? Because the rest of the body includes, a place where it can urinate or some other dirt that maybe actually it is the mouth is closed, and in most cases it doesn't have this dirt. So they said that the major the rest of the dog's body is impure based on this analogy. So so uh, they don't have actually a literal dalil in the literal sense of the word to say that the whole body of the dog is impure. So if it is saliva which is similar to the sweat of its body is impure, then the mouth must be impure. But I would like actually to explain for you a, a legal issue here. So if a dog touches a person's clothes and the dog is dry and a person's body is dry, does it affect its impurity? No, it doesn't affect anything. The only point when the whole body of a dog can render something impure if the dog is wet or a person's clothes are wet or the person's body is wet. So the dog passes by and touches that part. So in this case, it becomes impure because in cases of wetness, when it is wet, the body, the human body, or the dog, or the clothes, etc. So this is the only way where najasa can transfer. You understand what I'm saying? I think we have. Uh, when it says, okay, uh, Brother Umar Sayyid is saying, so if hypothetically, if the dog drinks normally, would it not be najasa? This is no, no, because even if it happens in this way, um, the najasa is still in the mouth of the dog, is still in the mouth of the dog. The scholars try to just give an approximate explanation of how the dog and because why? Because most of the beasts other animals, they drink like the dog, they make wulu like for example the cat and also the some other animals, but the sharia and some animals actually they drink normally or some. So this is the reason that the sharia restricted this to the dog. We will come to this, Brother Uthman. We will come to your question right now. The question, the question is also raised here. Does it include all types of dog? The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, as we agreed that we will try to touch upon what you can call how can we deduce the rulings, and this is very important in our course. The hadith, what does the text of the hadith says? The hadith says, can anybody remind me? The Prophet ﷺ said, and according to this hadith, the hadith of Abu Hurairah, إِذَا وَلَغَ الْكَلْبُ. What is the word al-kalbu? How do you translate al-kalb? Hmm.
The
How
dog.
can you translate this al-kalb?
The dog.
Yes,
Dog.
the dog. Does it refer to a certain dog, the dog which is owned by Brother Uthman or by Brother Muhammad?
It's general.
It's general, exactly, because it's called in Arabic language a generic noun. It's called generic noun. When the definite article is added to a noun in Arabic language, it includes comprehensiveness or umum. We call it umum. So this hadith is general and it includes all types of dogs. This is the most popular view of Malik and the majority of Muslim scholars. So there is no exception. There is no exception given even for the dogs which were allowed to use. According to the Islamic Sharia, there are three exceptions with regard to dogs. If a dog used for sheep or on a farm or for hunting, so these three types of dogs are permitted to use and permitted to be owned by a Muslim. A hunting dog, or the one used for guarding livestock or for guarding house. So these three types of dogs are permissible to use. So the question is raised here. If the Sharia allowed certain types of dogs, does it also allow or does it also regard their saliva and mingling with people in their normal life? They don't like actually to make a burden, because the Sharia, in allowing people to use certain types of dogs, this basically was to alleviate and to remove the hardship here, right? So the question is raised, is they are still impure? No, according to the massive majority of Muslim scholars, yes, the most those dogs are still impure. Even if the Sharia exempted from them from the general principle of being possessed and being used and being owned by Muslims. Why? Because we talk here about reasons, rationales, and legal rulings. Is there a consequence? Is there any type of relationship between allowing the dogs to be owned, certain types of dogs to be owned, and the case of impurity? Is there a relationship? No, there is no relationship between the two. So it cannot be used actually as a valid reason for saying that the reason for making the dog pure or impure is that it is owned or not, it is allowed by the Sharia or not. There are a lot of things which have been declared haram, but at the same time, they are haram to use, but they are not impure. Like, for example, using gold for meal. You understand what I'm saying? So in these cases, there is no relationship between the case of impurity and the case of possession or allowing them to be used. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, إذا ولغ الكلب في إناء أحدكم فاغسلوه. Fa. What is the indication of the fa in Arabic language? The indication of the fa is that it implies the conjunctive. The conjunctive fa means then, which means that a person should immediately engage in cleaning his clothes or his vessel once it is solid or polluted by the licking of a dog. This is the indication of the word of the fa in the text of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 7 times, and our Brother Uthman seems that he studied the Hanafi fiqh very well. So, mashallah, Brother Uthman is asking, why you are asking us? Because I am Shafi'i, anyhow, and it doesn't mean that I'm fanatic with regard to the Shafi'iyya. But he is asking, I'm Hanafi, ya akhi, and I'm living in Australia. Why you are imposing, and we see dogs everywhere, so why you, Sheikh, asking us to wash it 7 times? We as Hanafi and the Hanafi scholars, they maintain that's only 3. Why you are making it difficult for us in Australia here? I tell you, Brother Uthman, let us actually discuss why the scholars differed in this issue, and knowing the disagreement among them will open ways of using the dalil, and this is the most important issue in our sessions. You see, here the Hanafi scholars, they have a principle. They say when a hadith is reported by a certain Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ, and that Sahabi provides an opinion which differs from the text of this hadith, we adhere to the statement of the Sahabi and we leave the hadith. Oh, you leave the hadith for the statement of a Sahabi? They say yes, because he is not a normal Sahabi. He is the one who narrated this hadith. See, so he is aware of the meaning of this hadith. So migrating the application to this or applying this hadith by a Sahabi means that he did that for a very strong reason. Maybe it is abrogated, maybe he understood it in a different way. So the Sahabi is more knowledgeable about the basically the circumstances in which the hadith has been issued. It makes sense, right? This is the reason that they said if the ra'i of a Sahabi differs from the text of hadith, we adhere to what? To the ra'i, to the uncollaborated verdict or fatwa of a Sahabi. Okay, the Jumhur, they return back to them by saying no. If there is a contradiction between the fatwa of a Sahabi and a text that we have under discussion, so we adhere to the text and we don't refer to the Sahabi. Why? Because we have this text, and this text is of two types. It may be self-evident in the sense that it is very explicit and it doesn't give any room for ambiguity. So in this case, we should adhere to the text. Or it have some ambiguities, and in this case, we have to refer to different interpretations. Number two, the reasoning of a Sahabi. The Sahabi is a normal person, and if he uses his reason to validate or invalidate a certain thing, we still have a room to employ our own reasons and understanding that text. We cannot sacrifice the statement of the Prophet ﷺ for the statement of a Sahabi. There is a difference between the marfu' and the mawquf. There is a difference between the authority of a statement of the Prophet ﷺ and the authority of a Sahabi. This is the reason that the massive majority of the Muslim scholars adhere to that principle by saying that the word seven is intended in this text and it's self-evident. And if it conflicts with the statement of Abu Huraira, we still adhere to the statement or to the explicit meaning of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. In addition to the fact that the scholars maintained that even the report about the opinion of Abu Huraira is weak, even if it is not proved that Abu Huraira actually stated that it should be washed 3 times. So this is the reason that the preference is given to the view of the massive majority of scholars. My brothers, I confirm again, we are not indulging ourselves basically in getting those details of disagreements. I have a question to the Malikiyas. I have read that the hadith is in uh, okay. So is this is the point of the massive majority of scholars, that how they give preference to based on principles. And you see the disagreement among scholars, Hanafi and Shafi'i and Hanbali, you see that they have a base. So they have a base, which means that they were not just following their own desires. They were following certain methodologies in understanding those texts and applying them. The next ruling in this hadith, my brothers and sisters, is a question. Is the ruling extended to swine? Does the ruling of washing it 7 times applicable to swine? According to the strongest view, which is that of Shafi'i and Maliki scholars, which is reported through Mutarraf, the same ruling of a dog is extended to swine. Why? But I need actually to confirm. Uh, for the swine, it is najis. The swine, the unanimous agreement that the swine is najis. because it has been mentioned that it is clearly mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِيمَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُهُ إلا أن يكون ميتة أو دما مسفوحا أو لحم خنزير فإنه what? Who memorizes the Quran? فإنه what?
Rich.
فإنه رجس. What is the meaning of rijs? It is filthy, filth, right? So it is najis. But our question here, and this is very important, my brothers and sisters, when we have any disagreement among scholars, we need to put our hands on the specific point of disagreement. This is called in Arabic تحرير محل النزاع. تحرير محل النزاع is verifying for sure where and where exactly the scholars disagreed. You understand what I'm saying? In this way, it helps us in building up on evidence. So the scholars disagreed on whether it is seven or it is just normal filth. Those who said that is seven, they reached this conclusion through what? Can you tell me? Through what dalil? How did they reach it? Do they have a text in the Quran or in the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to say that when a pig licks or it does anything, does it have to be washed seven?
تخبك, yes. Wouldn't the khinzir be more than the kelp?
Exactly. They found out the najasa which results from the khinzir is unbearable. It is greater than the dog. It's more filthy than the dog. So they reached this through analogy, analogical deduction. There is another. I have a problem in looking at your comments because I keep looking in this. So the last comment, can the one who says if he sees that it is necessary to answer it right now, you can say it in the microphone because I couldn't catch it. And another point, which is if I miss any of your comments, you can at the end of the hadith, inshallah, raise that easily. Okay. According to the version which was related by Imam Muslim, he says the Prophet ﷺ is reported as saying, wash it 7 times, the first of which should be with earth. The question is it obligatory to rub the utensil or the vessel or the piece of cloth with dirt, with earth, 1 time at least? Yes, it is. This is a literal explanation of the hadith. This is confirmed by the addition found in the version related by Muslim. Okay, my brothers and sisters, if we have an additional word which is mentioned in a specific hadith related by a specific narrator, and this addition is not included in the standard version of the majority of scholars, do we accept it? The majority of Muslim scholars, including Shafi'iyya, they accept the ziyadatu istiqah, the addition provided by a trustworthy narrator. So, according to this version of Imam Muslim, he included this statement, wash it 7 times, and he added this statement, the first of which should be with earth. The first of which should be with earth. So he said that it is obligatory to wash it 1 time with earth. Another, I forgot actually to tell you that even modern science, we don't need actually to confirm this through science, that there are some germs and some microbes which are transferred by the saliva of a dog, and they found out that they have been removed completely after cleaning it with dirt or dust. Why? Because it simply has the formalin, I think, ingredient or element which helps on completely getting rid of those microbes. Okay. The question, is it obligatory to use earth specifically? Can we use other materials? The explicit meaning of the text indicates that only earth must be used and nothing can be used in its place. But according to one of the views of Imam Shafi'i, swap, salt water, or the eighth washing substitute earth because it is meant for extra cleaning. So the Shafi'i they looked at the reason why the Sharia exaggerated in adding one more time with dirt, and some of them they stopped on the literal submission to the text by saying, yeah, we have to wash it with earth or with clean dirt. And others, they look beyond the text by saying, no, there is a reason, and this reason is that it is the Sharia or the Prophet ﷺ wants us to exaggerate in washing the utensil or the vessel, and this is the reason that the Prophet ﷺ uh, mentioned for them that they have to wash it one extra time, one eighth time. So they said that if it is used swab or if we use actually some cleaners, extra cleaning, there is no problem about it. Anyhow, it is a matter of ijtihad, exercising personal reason. The question is also raised. The hadith says the vessel of one of you. So the word vessel here is also general and it includes all types of vessels, whether they contain liquids or solid food. So what can we do if we have butter, for example? Can anybody answer this question? If we have butter in a vessel, and if we have juice and the dog rushed into the vessel and drank, alhamdulillah, so we have to spill this juice, if it is lemonade juice or if it is mango juice, whatever. Okay, so in case that we have a butter, same thing, so we have Shahbad is saying that we have to remove and we remove the whole butter. If it is something solid, like
If
for
it's
example, it has ice cream. It licked the ice cream, ya Sheikh Shahzad. So in this case, we have to remove the whole ice cream. Alhamdulillah, we bought it from Baskin Robbins. It's something very expensive. Okay, this we refer to another. Uh, yes, we refer to another hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when he was asked about a solid food, the Prophet was asked about a mouse that fell into some ghee and died. So the Prophet ﷺ replied, throw it away, that's why the mouse, and that which surrounds it and eat it, what remains of the ghee. So the Prophet ﷺ allowed them, according to the report of Abu Dawood, which has been proven to be authentic, that the polluted area or the area where the dye, which was rendered impure, which have been removed and thrown away. Otherwise, it is not. But should we spill the whole water? Yes. The word throw it away is an addition which is related by Ali ibn Mushir, who is graded as possessing a strong memory and whose integrity is agreed upon. You remember, we have agreed here that according to the majority of Muslim scholars, if a variant version of the hadith, includes an addition which was not provided, for example, we have a sheikh, he gave us a hadith. So we have Shazad, and we have brother Muhammad, and we have Ibrahim, and we have Uthman. So Uthman brought up with a new addition, which an additional sentence or an additional word in the text, which is not reported by the rest of the other students of that teacher. Should we accept his? The scholar said that if this narrator, uh, Abu Abdullah, brother Abu Abdullah now, okay, unless narrator is thiqa. So if the narrator is thiqa, we accept ziyadat thiqa, right? We accept this ziyadat thiqa. This is the reason you remember at the beginning of explaining this hadith, I mentioned to you that we have to spill the whole water. Basically, why? Because it has been polluted by the dog, and the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that very clearly. My brothers and sisters, I think we have maybe 3 minutes for questions on this hadith. If you have, I finished discussing this hadith right now. So if you have any questions, you have the microphone, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I had a question.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, so in regards to the Malikiya, I've read that the ahadith that actually mention the prohibition of keeping dogs, they don't necessarily indicate prohibition, but rather offensiveness. So within the Malikiya, would they consider it makruh or would they consider it haram to own dogs outside of the 3 instances that you described?
No, they regard it actually as haram.
Okay.
They regard it as haram, and actually we need to be aware when the scholars use the word makruh, and this is a common terminology in Muwatta and in many books, that they were afraid of using the word haram. So when they use the word makruh, makruh here is a synonym to haram.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
وإياك.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Just a quick question regarding the qiyas. You mentioned there were 3 types. You expounded upon qiyas by greater reasoning. Could you briefly just mention the other 2, please?
Yes, the greater reasoning is like the example that we mentioned, and also the example of when the prohibition of slapping parents, which is extended or is based on a comparison to the prohibition of saying off to them, right? قياس المساوي and equal, when the rational is equally identified in the new case as it is identified in the old or the original case. An example of this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited us to devour the property of orphans. To devour the property of orphans, right? So in the same area, we are prohibited of misusing and manipulating them or wasting them. So this is qiyasul musawi. This is qiyasul musawi. And the third type is the qiyas of the inferior. The qiyas of the inferior. And this is when the rational is less identified in the new case. Like, for example, extending the ruling of wine into narcotic drugs. And the common cause here is intoxication. Now, let us now, inshallah, move to hadith number 7. The Prophet's ablution as described by Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. عن حمران مولى عثمان ابن عفان أنه رأى عثمان دعا بوضوء فأفرغ على يديه من إنائه فغسلهما 3 مرات ثم أدخل يمينه في الوضوء ثم تمضمض واستنشق واستنثر ثم غسل وجهه 3 ويديه إلى المرفقين 3 ثم مسح برأسه ثم غسل كلتا رجليه ثلاثا ثم قال رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يتوضأ نحو وضوئي هذا وقال من توضأ نحو وضوئي هذا ثم صلى ركعتين لا يحدث فيهما نفسه غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. The translation of this hadith goes as follows. On the authority of Humran, the freed slave of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who said that he saw Uthman call for water for ablution. He poured some of water from his vessel into his hands and washed them thrice. Then he put his right hand into the water and rinsed his mouth and nose and blew the water out of his nose. He then washed his face thrice and his arms up to the elbow thrice. Then he wiped his head with his wet hands and then washed both feet thrice. Then he said, I saw the Prophet performing ablution like this wudu of mine. And then he continued, whatever performs, it means that he continued saying, whoever performs ablution like this wudu of mine, and then prays 2 rak'ahs without having any other matter on his mind, will have all his past sins forgiven. My brothers and sisters, this hadith is very important because it provides practical demonstration of the act of wudu as being described by Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was not satisfied by just narrating the hadith, but it is reported that Uthman used to collect the whole army, invite them to teach them how to make wudu. Sometimes some of the caliphs used to make wudu on the minbar of the Prophet ﷺ to teach the ummah. Why? Because it is so important. This is one of the basics, since a person will be first held accountable on the day of judgment on his prayer. So the first thing of prayer that this is wudu or it's ablution, and the Prophet ﷺ said, "At-tuhuru shatrul iman." At-tuhur means wudu. Wudu is half of faith. So it demonstrates how the Prophet ﷺ made wudu, how the Prophet ﷺ washed the limbs of ablution, how the Prophet ﷺ followed a certain sequence, and finally he suggested or gave a recommendation of following wudu with 2 rak'ats, which causes a person's sins to be forgiven, which Humran and Uthman emphasized that if a person makes his wudu in that way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then follows it up with 2 rak'ats, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make his sins being forgiven. My brothers and sisters, the word wudu and the word wadu, there is a difference between the two. Wadu and wudu. Wudu having a fatha on the waw, and wudu is having what? Is having a dhamma on the waw. You know the difference between them.
Isn't
Okay.
wudu the water that's being used to do wudu?
Naam. So wudu is the water and wudu is the action. And this is extended in many examples in Arabic. So you see tahur and tuhur. So what is tahur? Tahur is the water used for purification. And tuhur with the dhamma is the act of purification. The same is ghasul and ghusul. The same with sahur and suhur. Sahur is the food which is eaten in before dawn in Ramadan. But what about suhoor with the dhamma? Suhoor means what? Suhoor means the action itself, the eating of sahur. You understand what I'm saying? So here, the scholars, what is the relationship here? Why did we discuss this? Basically, because the word wudu, when it is used in this context to mean water, it is a plasmy. You know the meaning of plasmy, my brothers and sisters? Linguistics word is homonym. A plasmy means a word which has two equal meanings. Two equal meanings. So the word wadu, I'm not talking about wudu, I'm talking about wadu with the fatha. It's a plasmy. It's a word which has two meanings. It is used to convey vague meanings. It may be used for mutlaq plain water or water already used for ablution. You understand what I'm saying? So it may be called for al-ma' al-mutlaq, or it may be used for al-ma' al-musta'mal. You remember when we talked about al-ma' al-musta'mal? The water which has been used before for the act of obligatory purification, like when a person makes wudu or purification with a certain type of water, a container, and then he can facilitate it for others to make wudu from the same water. I'm not talking about a leftover. I'm talking about water which has been exactly used for improving, for removing the state of ritual impurity. You understand what I'm saying? Like, for example, a pot which has been used for ghusl, for taking a shower, and the other persons use it in case of scarcity of water to use it again or not. According to the report of Jabir, and according to other reports, it is permissible to use the musta'mal water even in wudu and ghusl. عفوا. We can use the musta'mal, or the used water, in wudu or in ghusl. But according to the massive majority of the Muslim scholars, they said that the musta'mal wudu cannot be used. Why? Because they said that, let us contemplate into the whole situation of the Sahaba, those who lived a life of scarcity in resources, especially water. And they don't have that enough water for them. But we haven't reported any hadith from the Prophet ﷺ confirming that he collected water of wudu from all of them and facilitated it for others to use it afterwards. So this is the reason that the scholars said that the musta'mal wudu is not used. It's anyhow, it's a matter of controversy among scholars. Ahlul Hadith, the Zahiriya and the literalists, they in fact refer to the permissibility, it's permissible to use the musta'mal water even in removing a state of ritual impurity. Another point, which is, he reported, Uthman ibn Affan reported the Prophet's action through an action, through demonstration, as you see. So Humran, his freed slave, is saying that he saw Uthman poured from the vessel into his hands. He poured from the vessel into his hands. So as a general rule, it is recommended to wash the hands before dipping them into the vessel before beginning the ablution. You remember the hadith of Abu Hurairah that we studied last time? You remember? Does anybody memorize this hadith? Can say it to us in Arabic? Huh? Who can do this? You remember the hadith is استيقظ أحدكم. Does anybody remember? Okay, Brother Muhammad told me that everybody, alhamdulillah, memorizing the all ahadith. Can anybody say? Sheikh Uthman, Abu Abdullah, Brother Abu Abdullah, Brother Mustafa. Anybody can say it? Oh, mashallah. So I think it is Brother Muhammad. They are following up, and the brothers are following up with. Okay. So it's still in the process of memorizing it. Okay. So according to the hadith, okay, according to the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, according to the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said what? The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, no one should actually engage in taking water from the pot or the vessel unless he washes his hand 3 times. So Uthman ibn Affan is following the practice of the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith. You see that he poured from the vessel. He did not actually immerse his hands into the vessel. And according, as you know, uh, it is according to the majority of scholars, including Maliki, Shafi, and Hanbali, it is an act which is highly recommended. It's highly recommended not to actually wash. It's highly recommended to wash hands before immersing them into the vessel. Another point from this hadith, my brothers and sisters, he says he poured from the vessel into his hands and washed them thrice. It indicates that Uthman poured water on both his hands according to the variant reversion of the hadith. He poured water from right hand into his left hand, which means that Uthman ibn Affan did not put any of his hands. He poured water on the right. So when the right became pure, he started taking water from the pot by the right hand and pouring it on the left. Uthman mentioned and he practiced that he made it 3 times. He made it 3 times. You remember, according to the Sharia, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the wudu in ayah number 6 in Surah Al-Ma'idah. You remember this ayah, right? Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Here in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is reported as washing and cleaning 3 times, right? 3 times. With the exception when he came to the wiping over the head. He said that he did not actually wash it 3 times. So the question is raised, my brothers and sisters here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاغْسِلُوا. What does the word فَاغْسِلُوا means? Does it include 2, 3, 4, 5 until it is clean? What do you think? It's a general, okay? What does it mean? The Sunnah specifies it. So the Sunnah, you mean that, Abu Abdullah, that we have to wash our face 3 times according to the Sunnah? Okay, so why did you say once? And the hadith of Uthman ibn Affan made it 3 times. And the Prophet ﷺ commanded them to follow his instructions with regard to salah, with regard to prayers. You remember? Here, my brothers and sisters, the word فَغْسِلُوا in English, in Arabic, the word فَغْسِلُوا here in Arabic, according to the Shafi'i scholar, they say when the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ commands a person to do a certain act, so we try to explain this act according to Arabic language. Sheikh Abu Abdullah, brother Abu Abdullah, when you wash your hands up to the elbows for just 1 time, can I call that in Arabic that is you washed the hands up to the elbows? Can I say that literally you did? Yes, you did, right? Which means that the minimum, this is called the minimum requirement of a command. The minimum requirement of a command is when we say that wiping over there. We need this rule later. Why? Because when the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, wipe over the head. So what is the minimum requirement of mash over the head? The minimum requirement is actually just, if according to the Shafi'i, if you just put your finger on your head, it's sufficient. This is actually in contradiction to the Hanafi and other scholars. But anyhow, when the Prophet ﷺ made it 3 times, according to the hadith of Abdullah ibn Zayd that we will discuss inshallah next time, the Prophet ﷺ was reported as washing his limbs 2 times. In other ahadith, the Prophet ﷺ washed it 1 time, which means that the Prophet ﷺ sometimes he made it once, twice, or 3 times. So the Sunnah gave us alternatives, but the minimum is just once. So this is the maximum number reported from the Prophet ﷺ. There is another report which prohibits washing more than thrice. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As reported that the man came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him, Messenger of Allah, how is the ablution? And the Prophet ﷺ called for water in a vessel and washed his hands up to his wrist 3 times. Then washed his face thrice, and then he washed his forearm thrice. He then wiped his head and inserted both his index fingers in his ear canal, wiped the back of his ears with his thumbs, and wiped the front of his ears with index fingers. He then washed his feet thrice. Then he said, this is how ablution should be performed. If anyone, concentrate on this sentence, brothers and sisters. He says, if anyone does more or less than this, he has done it wrong and transgressed. فَمَنْ زَادَ فَقَدْ أَسَاءَ وَظَلَمَ. فَمَنْ زَادَ أَوْ نَقُصَ فَقَدْ أَسَاءَ وَظَلَمَ. If anyone does more or less than this, he has done it wrong and transgressed. Or the Prophet ﷺ said, transgressed and done wrong. This hadith has been reported by Ibn Khuzaymah and Abu Dawud, which means that 3 times is the maximum number that a person can wash each limb of ablution. The Prophet ﷺ said, rinse his mouth and nose and blow the water out. This is the way the Prophet ﷺ made, and we explained it in the previous hadith. How to make it? Can anybody explain for me? How can we wash make madmada and istinshaq all together? In the mic, very quickly. Yalla.
Isn't
Abdullah.
to
Yes.
get a cup your hands and put water in it, and then drink from the water and then inhale on the nose?
At the
Yes.
same
And
time.
exactly, in one time, and then another handful and a third handful. This is the most, this is the closest one to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as being described in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Zayd that we will explain later, right? And this is a way which was also explained in the hadith of Abu Hurairah. You remembered when we discussed it before, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this form, and this is also compatible with the way of Shafi'iyah. And some other scholars, they give different options for this, but this is the closest one. Okay, then he washed his face thrice, and he washed his arms up to the elbows 3 times. Then he wiped his head and washed his feet thrice. So scholars noted 2 points about the Prophet's ablution as described by Uthman. You know what? Number one, the scholars described his wudu, the wudu of Uthman ibn Affan, that he rinsed his mouth and nose before washing his face, right? He did the recommended actions of ablution before the obligatory actions. So jurists also discussed the issue of observing the sequential order of ablution by differentiating between its obligatory and recommended acts. According to the majority of scholars, including the Malik and Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad, that the sequential order of the obligatory acts of ablution must be observed. But Abu Hanifa and Imam al-Thawri, Dawood, and later students of Malik concluded that it is just recommended. Al-Shafi'iyya, my brothers, they referred, and the majority of scholars, now we discuss two issues. The issue of making wudu in a sequential order. You see, what is the sequential order for wudu regarding the obligatory wudu? You know, in the obligatory wudu, we have to start with the intention. Who can remind us? Go in sequence. Uh, what are the obligatory acts of wudu? Very simple. Who can remind us of them?
Your face,
Um,
your hands, your head, wiping your head, and washing your feet.
Washing the face. Number two, hands up to the
Washing your
elbows.
hands up to your elbows.
And then,
Wiping your head.
and finally,
Washing your feet up to the ankles.
you mean the feet, right?
Correct.
So this is a sequence which was followed by the Quran in the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. A question is raised for everybody. The ayah in the Quran, the ayah number 6 of Surah Al-Ma'idah, did it give mention to some parts to be wiped and other parts to be washed?
yes, Sheikh.
Yes, in normal speech, if I give you an option to make them in order, what should you say? What should you do? For sure, I think you will most probably categorize the parts to be washed first, and then you put the parts to be wiped second, right? Or vice versa, right?
No.
But you don't mingle them. Okay, so if you mingle, so you mingle for a reason, right? If you mix, if you put the parts to be wiped in the middle, so it should be actually for a reason. You understand what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
understand? So this is the reason the scholar said that, oh, there are two contexts in this hadith which support the idea that sequence is supported. Number one, the Prophet ﷺ used the wow. And by default rule, the wow means sitting in order. When you use the word, the wow, you say Abu Abdullah came first, and then brother Ibrahim, and then and says Ja Ibrahim wa Muhammad wa Uthman. So now, normally we use the word wow, and it is ambiguous for sure that the wow may be used for indicating sequence or not, because the fa is particularly used for this, for those who studied Arabic grammar. But again, when the Quran put the wiping of the head inside in the middle of washing the parts to be washed, so the scholar said that this is a context which supports the idea that the wow is not used for just collecting things or combining things in common, but it also means sequential order. You understand what I'm saying? This is also supported by the fact that the Shafi'iyya, the Malikiyya, and the Hanabila, they reviewed all the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which talk about a detailed description of the Prophet's wudu, and they found out that the Prophet ﷺ never ever broke this sequence. The Prophet ﷺ never ever broke this sequence, which means that it is obligatory. And this is the reason that they hold it obligatory actually to have or to engage in a sequential order. This is the reason, or this is a strong evidence of the majority of the Muslim scholars. A note here in between lines, the sequential order, my brothers and sisters, doesn't include that you should wash the right before the left. Because if you wash your left hand before the right hand, there is no problem about it. The sequential order means that sequential order between washing hands and the face. Washing face first should be first, and then the hands. But if you start with the right or the left, yes, it is makruh for sure, because the Prophet ﷺ used to start with the right hand. But according to the dalil that we presented, the Prophet ﷺ did not engage, it did not make it obligatory to wash the right hand first. You understand what I'm saying? So this is a sequential order, and the sequential order is only restricted to what? is only restricted to the obligatory parts of wudu. But for the recommended acts of wudu, it is a sequential order among them is not obligatory. Simply why? Because the Prophet ﷺ has been reported as breaking this sequence in some ahadith of his, and this is a view of the majority of the Muslim scholars. The Prophet again, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, his arm is up to the elbows. إلى وغسل يديه إلى المرفقين. What is the meaning of the word إلى, my brothers and
Two.
sisters? Two. So if I say to you, for example, up to the elbows, do the elbows are the elbows included or not?
Yes, according to some scholars.
It is still ambiguous. It is still ambiguous, right? Because sometimes you say ذهبت, for example, uh, to the station. It doesn't, it is, you need to get some fruit from the store close to the station, so you travel to the station. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've been inside the station. It means that you reached the place, but you didn't involve, you didn't get into. You understand? So it is still ambiguous. The word ila is used in an ambiguous way. But there is this ambiguity, as I mentioned to you, should be removed before applying the hadith, right? Because there's ambiguity in this hadith, and also it is in the ayah. Allah Ta'ala mentioned that was actually removed by a number of things. Malik al-Shafi and Ahmad maintain that it's obligatory to include the elbows. This is view, but Zufar and others did not include the elbows. However, here the word ila, we should refer to its usage in Quran and Sunnah. So here there is an ayah, ثم أتم الصيام إلى الليل. Then complete the fast ila, up to sunset. So should we fast a part of the night, a little part in the night to make sure that we have already entered into the night? Yes, yes, we have to. We have to. Do you, otherwise you are in doubt. You are in doubt because the default rule is that it is daytime, and you cannot end the day except by certainty. You know the rule of certainty and doubt. Now, the default rule when we are in the daytime, how can we break our fast? Can we break our fast while we still doubtful? Oh, it is the night or not? It is the night or not? It is or not? It is or not? Okay, some people say, oh, make the adhan. Don't make the adhan. Do this. No, we have to get into night by yaqeen. You understand? And to achieve this yaqeen, we have to engage ourselves in fasting just for a second, at least, right? So when we use the word ila layl, means up to sunset, means that we included a part of the night. You understand this? And also the word ila has been used to mean with. And in this case it is very clear that the word ila is used actually to include the elbows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, Surah Al Imran, Man ansari ila Allah. What does it mean, ila here? Man ansari ma'allah, who are my supporters along with Allah. So when the Prophet ﷺ says, or when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Taghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq," the word ila means what? Here, ila al-marafiq means ma'a, along with, including, right? And there is another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, wash the hands up to the elbows. The hadith which has been, the Prophet ﷺ also, إذا توضأ أدار الماء على مرفقه. The hadith of Jabir reported that the Prophet ﷺ used to run the water down his elbows while performing ablution. I will, inshallah, stop at this point on this hadith, on the second hadith. My brothers and sisters, subhanallah, I was planning to take 5 ahadith, but it is not possible if we would like to go in detail and to explain things this way and to give us, inshallah, room of elaboration. So, inshallah, you are welcome of raising any question related to this hadith. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I just had a quick question.
Sure.
So in this hadith we covered the obligation of tertib. Some fuqaha also mention muwala, and from the evidence of tertib we mentioned that from the narration there doesn't seem to be a narration where the order is mixed up. But in those same narrations we don't see someone taking a break during wudu. So do you mind explaining why that wouldn't be also wajib?
In fact, the muwala, or making, when washing parts of a pollution, a person should immediately wash the next part. And the scholars define the muwala, how it is practiced, by engaging in the next or the next limb before having the previous limb dried. And this is the view of Malikiya. The Malikiya, they made muwala obligatory. But in fact, the Shafi'iyya, they have 2 opinions. The old version of the madhab is that muwala is obligatory like the Maliki. But the new version is that it is not obligatory and it's only recommended. And this is the view of Imam Ahmad also. So the standard view of Shafi'iyya that it is recommended. Why the Shafi'iyya? The Shafi'iyya, their concept is that to assemble and to gather all possible proofs and evidence and put them in front of us so that we can reconcile among all those reports and get a comprehensive picture about the issue under discussion. The Shafi'iyya, they noticed that in a couple of ahadith and in a couple of reports, on the top of them is the practice of Ali ibn Abi Talib, that when Ali ibn Abi Talib, and also it is reported from Umar ibn al-Khattab, when Iman said to him, Ya Umar, when a man made his wudu and he left the spot untouched by water. So Umar ibn al-Khattab said to him, go back and make wudu. Go back and make wudu. So the man said, I cannot. It's so difficult for me. It was very cold. So Umar ibn al-Khattab said to him, it's sufficient for you to just wash your feet. You understand what I'm saying? So in this case, Umar ibn al-Khattab did not support the muwala. Why? Because it's long time. The person actually has already made salah after the wudu, the false wudu that he made, the incorrect wudu that he made. But Umar ibn al-Khattab did not ask him to resume a pollution from the very beginning. And he was satisfied just by washing his feet. And it was also reported from Ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu, Abdullah ibn Umar and Ali ibn Abi Talib, that it happened that they wiped over a leather socks or a leather boots. And then after the elapse of time, the designated time for wiping over the boots, which is 1 night or 3 consecutive nights for a traveler, what did he do? He did not make whole wudu from the beginning. He just took off the shoes and he washed his feet. And he washed his feet. So this is a proof of Shafi'iyya that the muwala is only recommended. So why did they say it is recommended? They say because they have a view, if there is a way of covering any, of narrowing the gaps between us and the other mazahib, which means that if there is another mazhab which makes it obligatory, so it is better to remove any cause of differences. And that's why it becomes recommended. You got it?
No.
Barakallah.
Barakallahu feekum.
Any further questions?
Sorry, Sheikh, if no one else has any questions, just with this hadith as well. So, in it, Uthman radiallahu anhu requests the water. I've also read that some ulama mentioned that there's a karaha of getting someone to pour the water for you when making wudu. Do you mind explaining what's the reasoning behind that? I know.
نعم الشافعية يعني الشافعية they regard it as disliked actually to have somebody making wudu for you. And الشافعية reason for this is that it is an act of worship. And this act of worship, a person shows full submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a sense of humbleness. So the custom or the practice of calling others to make wudu of others, to others, it is like showing arrogance and pride. This is the reason that they based their view on it. But for sure, if it doesn't include this type of arrogance or pride, like for a person that he is in need for help, like a sick person, or for example, a person that he is in need for help, there is no problem. Especially that it was reported from the Prophet ﷺ, according to the authentic hadith of Anas, that he used to carry the vessel full of water to the Prophet ﷺ, and the hadith of Mughira ibn Shu'bah, and Mughira ibn Shu'bah was the head of his tribe, and he wanted to take off the shoes of the Prophet ﷺ to pour water on his feet. But the Prophet ﷺ told him that I have already entered those leather boots clean, pure, on pure position, so I'm going to wipe over them. So here we have some examples of the Sahaba pouring water in the hadith of Abi Juhayfa, which was reported in Muslim and Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ called Bilal with water, and then he made wudu in front of everybody. So there is no problem actually of making it, as long as it doesn't have any arrogance or pride in this case.
If you don't mind me asking, how are you able to determine, this? Because obviously with the pride and whatnot, it's subjective, right? So would you base it on the aada or the urf of a time? So I'll give an example with the, our pants above our knees. Should, with the argument of it's not done out of pride, would that be okay as well? Barakallahu feekum.
Like for example, my brother, if it is an elderly person, if it is a sick person, if there is a reason which is known that he is doing this because out of showing respect to him, there is no problem about it. This is from the context, from the situation itself, and also from the culture. You see, in certain cultures, it's out of respect to show respect for your grandfather and for your brother and for your elderly person that you pour water on him. So, or the wife to show respect for her husband, and a husband shows respect for his wife, that he may actually, and this is a mutual cooperation, So in this case, it is tolerable. There is no problem. But if a person is not in need for help, he is not really in need for help, and he calls others to help him, basically, and they call them to wash his hands, and to wipe over, in this case, and there is no need for this, so it is actually prohibited. It is disliked.
Barakallahu
fikum. So we will have just 10 minutes, inshallah, Brother Muhammad, as a break, and then we will come back, inshallah.
Inshallah. Barakallahu feekum, Shaykhna.
وفيكم حفظكم الله.